Minister for Human Rights. In office since 20 August 2018, she is the chairperson of the Parliamentary Committee on Appointment of Chief Election Commissioner and member of the Election Commission of Pakistan. Is that correct? She has been a member of the National Assembly of Pakistan since August 2018 and serves as a Chief Whip for Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. Previously, she was a member of the National Assembly from June 2013 to May 2018. So will just ask you very general few questions. The first one is, why do you think the right to privacy is a fundamental human right?
I think it's a basic human right. Okay, if there's no privacy and no protection for your person, then nothing else is safe and secure as an individual, for any individual. Or right to privacy, if it's not there, then you actually don't have your other rights, like right to safety, right to the freedom of expression, freedom of movement. All this is really contingent on protection of your basic right to privacy and how you lead your life. But problem is that right to privacy, like so many other rights, has to be balanced in this day and age. Your right to privacy cannot include harboring weapon systems in your house, building IEDs and so on. So there always has to be a safe balance between different rights, because so many rights in a way contradict each other. And that's why I feel, I'm not an expert by the way in digital matters, but I feel therefore when PICA was formulated, social media rules, our ministry, when our government came to power, we drafted a bill on data protection, which we've given to the IT ministry, and we're waiting for them to submit whatever their final bill is to the cabinet, because you can only have proper PICA operationalized and social media rules operationalized when there is a data protection law in place. So I think that becomes very relevant.
Thank you so much. We actually just had a session on data protection bill, a very detailed one. We have Bilal from IT Ministry here. He's the director of IT Ministry, and Jahan Ara. So we had somebody from civil society plus business. So they talked about the bill in detail. But Shireen, I would also like to ask you, and this is something that we find it very challenging कि आपके laws भी आ जाते हैं, regulations और policies भी आ जाते हैं, but the kind of culture that we have, you must have seen in media कि gender-based violence के ऊपर, when they release information of survivors and victims and don't really care about their identities. So how do you see कि अगर आपका law भी आ जाता है और फिर like the culture around data breaches या right to privacy के violation, उसको हम किस तरीके से strengthen कर सकते हैं?
देखिए, पहली बात तो ये है कि जो भी आप कानून लाएंगे ना, unless आप उसकी implementation सही नहीं करेंगे, तो that law becomes meaningless. Procedure यही होता है, law pass होता है, फिर rules बनते हैं, the relevant ministry, फिर implementation होती है. One of the problems is that everything is left to the state and the government to implement. But for example, we have our Zainab Alert law, child abuse के खिलाफ कवानीन है, child protection act है. But society also has to act responsibly. So while we can create awareness in society, mindsets have to change of the people also. You see, law becomes operational once a crime is committed. What we should also aim for is that we change societal mindsets so that those crimes are not committed, whether it's violence against women, protection of transgenders, child abuse. These things, you can have as many laws and as strict an implementation till you change people's thinking and mindsets. Because for example, child abuse किधर से होता है? घरों से शुरू होता है. So that is the big challenge for Pakistan, I think, other than formulating laws and implementing them, कि आप society को कैसे सोच कैसे बदलेंगे लोगों का. और मैं समझती हूँ उस पे हम ज़्यादा फोकस नहीं करते. तनकीद भी होती है, हुकूमत पे होती है every day Khilji is sitting here, every morning he sends me some case or the other of some woman being abused or harassed. Then we got in touch with the police despite the 18th Amendment. I must say that the police force normally they do respond fast to us, but that's not the point, because crime to commit ho gaya na. So therefore, alongside the law, you need to have changing of mindsets, which means awareness programs, and in that organizations like yours can be very helpful, because government can't alone spread awareness. Child abuse pe to we have in Islamabad, in almost every sector or 2 or 3 sectors together, we have groups where we have housewives, we have the local traders, and we have other people. So we go there and we give our message with our material for prevention of child abuse. But outside of Islamabad, we've asked our MNAs, especially our women MNAs, कि आप अपनी constituencies में go and do the same awareness raising. But the public also has to change, you know, and that is not happening at the speed that we want it to happen. So that's a challenge for all of us. But I just want to also add कि जो हमने अपना draft share किया IT ministry से, उसमें we have given a very clear-cut definition of sensitive personal data which needs to be protected. And in that we have defined it very categorically also. I've bought the definition, I leave it with you, it's a fairly lengthy definition. But that I think is very important. And also data that is to be shared should be shared in terms of why is it needed. Proportionality honi chahiye. You can't share all data just like that. There has to be a proportionality of data sharing as well, and securing the data. Even if you're sharing it with say an institution, that should not be leaked from there. For example, look what happened recently in the Noor Muqadam case, where the court ordered that the defendants should be given the CCTV footage with strict instructions that this should not be shared with the media, and it was. Then we had to, it was brought to my attention that same evening, we got in touch with PEMRA and we made them issue a directive that no TV channel should be doing it. But by then it had already circulated widely. How do you prevent that? I mean, the courts, in my view, when they had given strict instructions, perhaps should have done contempt on whoever showed that data on the media. But nothing happened, unfortunately.
And I think also the reason is that it's not just mainstream TV channels, they also have
Social
digital
media
channels. So even if PEMRA has given a notice to them and they stopped airing that news, the same content is still on their digital channels and lying on YouTube and stuff. But this also brings me to a question around, you know, Bilal and Jahan was in the session, and also Nadra chairperson, and they all said one thing, that one data protection bill cannot really bring a change, right? So we need an ecosystem where, you know, like all departments, whether private or public, they adhere to, you know, like right to privacy. I think what my question is that not just the public bodies like ministries, but also women, you know, they hesitate to go to certain law enforcement agencies because they are worried about their data, and I think that similarly applies to the courts as well. So we had this anti-rape ki amendments jo pehle aayi thi, but now we have this really good law anti-rape ka jo pass hua hai, और उसमें confidentiality की वो है. So if you can talk a little bit about ये कि अगर law enforcement agencies data breach करती हैं, so what are the things that people can do and how we can build that confidence?
There are penalties in the rape law for data infringement, the privacy infringement, even if it's done by a government entity. So उसमें ये protection आ गई. देखिए सीधी सादी बात है, Article 14 of the Constitution provides individuals right to privacy. So anybody who violates that is liable to be subjected to the law of the land. So that's one particular issue. But social media ka problem hai. It's unregulated. It is it's a free for all and so many levels, and the sort of defamation. We don't have strong defamation laws either. So you can just put any half truth or fake accusations, and by the time the other person has clarified it, the damage is done. I mean, this is one of the big things that, you know, if you're going to tell a lie, tell a big lie, so the person takes a long time to refute that. This is part of, propaganda that everybody who's an expert in propaganda knows. So we have, the challenges now have become very big with social media. अब now देखो कितना आ रहा है about Facebook deliberately allowing certain agendas on Facebook. But I know for a start, if anybody posts things on Kashmir, Facebook was deleting them ad nauseum. But if you challenge the Holocaust or something like that, immediately you cannot have your views given. So there is this whole problem that you have with these social media platforms also.
So with the defamation laws, I just wanted to say that we have civil defamation law and the criminal defamation law, and I think the enforcement is a problem. और over regulation है. So we have cyber criminal defamation law as well in PICA, जिसके लिए हम कह रहे हैं कि please आप उसको निकाल दें, because we already have like good laws जिनकी implementation की ज़रूरत है. So I think वही बात कि आपका ecosystem कितना strong है, क्योंकि laws तो मौजूद हैं लेकिन उनकी implementation का मसला है. So एक आखिरी सवाल जो मैं आपसे
But I just want to remind you कि remember PICA is a criminal law.
Yeah.
तो उसका focus उसी पे होता है कि if somebody does a criminal act, how do you, so it's a punitive law. Criminal laws by definition tend to be, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, I see a lot of black coats here, but punitive law, in my understanding, criminal law tends to be punitive by nature. How do you, a lot of people say that the criminal defamation clause should be removed. But there's an equally strong argument and lobby that says no, if we do not have criminal defamation, then vulnerable people will be the victims, that they will be targeted and they will have no recourse to the criminal justice system on it. So this is a debate on, again, I said at the beginning, the balancing act becomes very important as well.
Yeah, we really need to make sure that if the provision is there in PICA, then it shouldn't also be weaponized against vulnerable groups. So just wanted to throw it out there. So one last question that I wanted to ask, in your experience, because I see your timeline full of hate and all. So as a woman in the public eye, how has your experience of privacy been online and offline?
I think generally there is an assumption, if you're in the public eye, if you're a public person, then you have no privacy. So whether you're out with your family, people feel it's their right, they want to come and they give. You're sitting in a restaurant with your family, somebody will come and give their views on the government, somebody will want to take pictures, and if you object to it, they get very offended. But every person, even a public person, has a right to privacy. And their families certainly, they have not chosen to be public. The family's privacy needs to be protected. If I'm a public figure, that doesn't mean my husband or my children are also should be amenable to the public. They have a right to their privacy. They're not in the public domain. And as a woman, you're especially vulnerable, because there's an assumption that you're a politician, so they can comment on your appearance, they can comment on everything and anything. But my point is, a woman should, if you have an issue with a woman's viewpoint, then criticize and critique. But to then make fun and, hurl sort of insinuations and abuses, that becomes a big problem. And in our society, it's the women who are always vulnerable in public life. Men really are not targeted at all on what they do in their personal lives, and they get away with almost murder, and in some cases even murder. You have the Jokio case in Sindh right now, where the MNA, who the family of the murdered person had nominated, he was put under so much pressure that he sort of said, okay, I'm making my peace with the family, with the murderers, and exonerated the MNA. But the wife and the mother of the murdered person have not. And we had written to the IG Sindh to provide protection to the family, and they did provide. Apparently, they have provided the protection. But this is the problem here, that women, especially, are. It's like a free for all. Women are easy targets, and everybody thinks women are fair game.
Yeah.
And so, to be in politics for a woman requires a lot of. You have to be thick-skinned, and you have to also have this attitude that as long as you know you're doing something right, to hell with everybody else, because people will attack you, people will criticize you. I have suffered that in the last parliament. By the way, I was chief whip in the last parliament, not now.
Sorry.
When Khwaja Asif, in his famous speech, made all sorts of caricatures and attacks against me. And it was what was sad was that the PMLN women did not support the women caucus in taking a stand against it. All the other women from the other parties did, but the PMLN women refused to do so. So if women also don't get together to protect the reputation of other women in politics, then it becomes a problem.
Yeah, Minister Sahab, वैसे ये this one thing that I have seen across the party, कि हमारे जो men politicians हैं, they troll women, they say really nasty, misogynistic, sexist things even in the parliament and get away with it. And I think party leaderships जो हैं सारी parties की, उनको इस पे स्टैंड लेना चाहिए, क्योंकि बहुत सी जो ऑनलाइन मिसोजिनी भी हमें नज़र आती है वो डिफरेंट पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज़ की आदमियों की लीडरशिप से नज़र आती है, एंड देन इट इनकरेजेस ट्रोल ब्रिगेड. सो मुझे ये लगता है कि ये तमाम पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज़ को दे रियली नीड टू डू समथिंग अबाउट दिस, कि विद इन पार्टीज़ जो है वो किस तरीके से मिसोजिनी और सेक्सिज्म को ख़त्म कर सकें.
Political parties also, but it's beyond political parties. Again, it comes back to society. Look at the way look at the way that people in courts, why are there not women lawyers more active in courts? Because the court atmosphere is very misogynist. You've seen what happened in the Maleev court right now. So society as a whole has to change their attitude, and we have to stop defining women either through their dress or through their personal habits. We have to stop doing that. Do we define our men in the way that they appear? And I really don't want to go into details, although I could. Do we define? No, seriously. If somebody comes unkempt, with his nada hanging beyond the... Do we define men like that? No. Heaven help if a woman is considered to be dressed in what is not seen as appropriate dress. Although what appropriate dress is, I am still not very comfortable with that idea. So I think generally, it's not just men. At the end of the day, remember, women have a primary role. Why? Because the mother, if the mother educates the children in a particular way, the children carry that culture outside when they grow up. So the woman in the home, that's why the role of a mother becomes very critical. If in the house the mother is seen as giving preference to the male child, if the mother gives more freedom to the male child rather than the female child, that culture continues. It again begins from the home and reflects in society, and obviously governments also reflect what societal norms are.
That's true. So just want to ask you last question. If you can say few words around the safety of journalists law that has been passed. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, actually I thought you may ask that, so I bought a copy of the law.
Okay.
Because what we are doing is, and especially there's a provision for women against harassment of women journalists. There's a special provision for that. There is a commission that's going to be there to listen to the complaints of the journalists, which is an independent commission. I think it has one representative of the Ministry of Human Rights, otherwise it's a totally independent. It also, there's some debate on the Article 6 kya hai usme, ke good faith ka, and that is, let me tell you one, this whole bill has gone through all the journalist bodies. The last subcommittee, Human Rights ki subcommittee meeting mein, whoever was not called, more journalists who wanted to come, including PFUJ, sare aaye the. Nobody objected to Article 6, and I do want to read it because it's important to understand why we put it in. There is no punishment defined in it separately. It's a good faith thing, and here we are. As you can see, it's a very big bill. It says good faith obligation of journalists and media professionals. 1. All journalists and media professionals must respect the rights or reputation of others and not produce material that advocates national, racial, ethnic, religious, sectarian, linguistic, cultural, or gender-based hatred. So this is protecting the vulnerable people also, which may constitute incitement to discrimination, hostility, or violence. We need this because the transgender community, women, children, if you do the wrong time, irresponsible reporting with no data, then you're targeting these people. But we've not said कि उनको imprison कर दो या कुछ. What we have said is, and the second part of Article 6, all journalists and media professionals must not engage in the dissemination of material known by such an individual to be false or untrue. The journalists who fail to fulfill obligations in subsections 1 and 2 will be tried in accordance with relevant laws. So we have not said what punishment, or they'll go to they'll go criminal proceedings, or they'll be imprisoned or whatever, or fined. Nothing. We've just said they'll be dealt with in accordance with the law. So actually Article 6 has nothing in it that restricts a journalist from performing their duty. We've given protection from abuse, violence and intolerant behavior to protect the journalists, that the government will take steps to protect violence against journalists and media professionals. This is not just for journalists. We've defined journalists separately and media professionals. Media professionals are all the people who operate the cameras, who are behind the scenes, but their lives are also endangered. Then we have made it incumbent upon the media owners to provide insurance for their workers, especially those who go for hazardous duties. They have to give salaries on time. So there are people who are not happy with this bill. But this bill was not drafted by the government. It was drafted by an international law expert. Every journalist body has seen it, and over a period of 1 year, given their amendments, we've accepted all those amendments, and even the Reporters Without Borders in the initial period gave amendments. We've had senior journalists, Hamid Mir was instrumental from day one in getting other journalists to look at it, give Mazar Abbas, Zafar Abbas, PFUJ, Islamabad Press Club, and then the other provincial different press clubs. Everybody had a say in it. So this is a bill that has actually been and now hopefully will become law next week. This has been written and drafted and amended, and the final form after inputs from all the journalist stakeholders and media professionals. So I think for Pakistan this is an amazing bill, and hopefully it will become law. And it also protects sources, by the way, that you cannot force a journalist to reveal their sources. So there is a law. It's actually a very, very good bill, and a bill that stands up to international scrutiny. And hopefully the President will be signing it, I think, on the 1st of December, because we want it to be a public event so people know, because it actually is a landmark achievement, I think, of our government. It has taken a long time. We've had impediments from within and from without. So it has been a struggle for us also to get the bill to where it has finally gotten to.
No, thank you so much. I really hope that the provisions that you have mentioned also apply in the online space as well. You know, the interpretation, what the independent commission, if they will be doing the interpretation of this bill, they'll do it in a way where it applies in the online space also. I'm not sure though.
Well, we'll see how once the law is formed, then the rules will be formulated. But just the fact that we have an independent commission, and by the way, there has to be a women representative in it. This was added in the subcommittee में suggestions जो आई थी. So it's hopefully will provide the safety and security to working journalists and to the media professionals, which has been missing. And also ये जो देखे ना, the anchors, highly paid anchors get their money, but the ordinary beat reporter and the media professionals are not paid for months on end by some media houses. So this law will give that protection of employment and payment and so on, salaries as well.
थैंक यू सो मच।
क्वेश्चन है मेरा, अगर आप ले ली क्वेश्चन ये कि आप जर्नलिस्ट प्रोटेक्शन बिल भी आप ले आए, आप सहाफ़ियों के हवाले से बहुत करीब उनके आवाज़ पे बात भी करती है, लेकिन दूसरी साइड पे माजी की हुकूमतों की तरह ये इंकशाफ भी कि आपकी हुकूमत भी सहाफ़ियों के कॉल को रिकॉर्ड ली कर ट्रेस करती है, उनके कॉल टेलीफोन कॉल सुनती है। तो बीइंग ए ह्यूमन राइट्स मिनिस्टर, आप नहीं समझते कि ये प्राइवेसी के और कानून और इंसानी हकूक़ के खिलाफ है कि आप किसी सहाफ़ी के कॉल्स को रिकॉर्ड करें?
देखिए, जहाँ तक मुझे पता है ये पॉलिसी हुकूमत की मेरे नज़र में तो नहीं है कि हर सहाफ़ी की कॉल ट्रेस हो। इफ़ देयर इज़ अ केस जिसकी हो रही है, दे शुड ब्रिंग इट, बिकॉज आपके कवानीन ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्ट करते हैं इस पे। सो हम जो कर सकते हैं जर्नलिस्ट प्रोटेक्शन बिल में वो तो हमने डाल दिया है, लेकिन जो कवानीन ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्ट करते हैं प्रिवेसी के, उसके तहत किसी को रोका तो नहीं जा सकता। वो कोर्ट जाए कि जी मेरा फ़ोन टैप हुआ है, प्रूफ दे। सो वो अब हमारा इसमें प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ सोर्सेज जो हमने डाल दिया है, आई थिंक दैट विल गो अ लॉन्ग वे टू इंश्योरिंग दैट जर्नलिस्ट आर नॉट हैरेस्ड एज इट वर।
थैंक यू सो मच। बहुत शुक्रिया मिनिस्टर साहबा आपके आने का, और ना सिर्फ बिल के बारे में बात करने का, बट ये प्रीविसी के हवाले से जो आपने कमेंट्स दिए हैं वो बहुत ज़्यादा फ्रूटफुल हैं। सो बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। सो कैन वी हैव अ राउंड ऑफ अप्लॉज?